So welcome to this course. This course is going to be a quick tutorial, going to be a quick one about Nestjs. And Nestjs is a framework that we use to build server-side Node.js application. So in order for you to follow up in this tutorial, you should have Node.js installed in your computer. So I'm already in, this is the nodejs.org, visit nodejs.org, and you can quickly download Node.js, either the recommended one, that's the long-term support LTS, or you install the current version. So I already have Node.js installed in my computer. So going back to Nestjs, Nestjs is a framework, and it's a same framework for building efficient and also scalable Node.js server-side applications. Now, we use Node.js to build server-side applications, but Nest.js helps us simplify that. And Next.js also comes with TypeScript support out of the box, but it doesn't force it on us. We can also use JavaScript, vanilla JavaScript, to write our code. And it also combines OOP, also functional programming, and functional relative programming. So under the hood, Nest.js also uses Express.js as the default, but you can also use it with Fastify. And that's because Nest.js does not handle HTTP server for us. So it uses framework like Express.js or Fastify to be able to handle incoming requests, that is HTTP requests. So in order for us to get started and quickly have an insight on Nest.js and how we can actually use it to build our application, I'm going to open up my terminal, and I'm already navigated in a folder where I would like to create this project. And but I would also create another folder which I'll call Nest.js, and then I'll cd into this created folder. Now we're not going to be using the Nest CLI because I just want to show you how to do stuffs bare bone with Nest.js, and this can actually help you to know what Nest.js is all about before you can go further to using the Nest CLI to be able to generate a project. So in order for us to get started, inside this created folder, I'm going to initialize npm. So I'll just say npm init-y. Now this will help us to generate a package.json because we want to go ahead and install some dependencies of this project. And in order for us to do that, we are going to initialize npm. And then what this happens is the -y flag just says yes to everything, because this actually goes on to ask us a couple of questions. So by just saying -y, we skip that. So it's done, and we have our package.json that has been automatically generated for us. You can see it in this path, package.json. So let's go ahead and install the dependencies of this project. So we'll say npm install, or you could just say npm I, and we are going to install Nest at nestjs/common. We're also going to install at nestjs/core. We're also going to install at nestjs/platform-express. And we're also going to install reflect-meta data. And we're also going to install TypeScript. Now, once this is done, I'm going to walk you through the following and why we're installing them, why we are going to install nestjs/common, also why we need to install nestjs/platform-express, also reflect metadata, and TypeScript. So we are going to walk you through why we need this in our project and how it's also going to help us to work with Nest.js. So it's done installing, and next I'll do is open up our Nest.js project in our code editor, Visual Studio Code in my case. So the code.command is going to open up this project in Visual Studio Code. So this is our project in our Nestjs folder. I'll quickly remove the get started guide. And in our package.json, we have all the dependencies that we installed. So Nestjs common, Nestjs core, Nestjs platform express, reflect metadata, and TypeScript. So let me walk you through the need of installing these dependencies. So Nestjs/common. In order for us to build a Nestjs application, we need Nestjs/common because we are going to be importing some functions, some classes with the help of this dependency. Going over to Nestjs/platform-express, also we need this dependency because it acts as a plugin. Now, in order for Nestjs to build, to handle HTTP requests, Nestjs automatically doesn't do that on its own, so it needs some kind of adapter. So we are actually using this dependency to tell Nestjs that, okay, we are going to be using Express.js to handle HTTP requests. That is for us to handle incoming requests and also for us to give a response. The default is Express.js, but also it supports Fastify. So you can also use Fastify, but Nestjs uses Express.js out of the box, and that's why we also went ahead to install that dependency to use in our project. So the next one, reflect metadata. Reflect metadata is actually it's a library, and it's a library that is actually tied to decorators. Now we are going to use decorators a lot in this dummy project. Actually, with this crash course, we are going to use decorators a lot. So if you don't know much about decorators, you don't have any problem about that. We are going to use decorators a lot in this project. So TypeScript, I believe you must have heard of TypeScript. Nestjs actually uses TypeScript out of the box. So that's why we installed TypeScript for us to use it in this project. But you can also use it with vanilla JS, as we saw earlier. So Nestjs is not like imposing TypeScript on us, but it's actually a good practice. And every Nestjs project you see out there, most of them actually uses TypeScript. So in order for TypeScript to be able to compile our code for us, we need to set up a tsconfig file. So I'll quickly come out from the package.json, and in the root folder of our project that is inside our Nestjs folder, I'll quickly create a tsconfig.json file. So now this is going to help TypeScript to actually compile our code to JavaScript. And in order for it to do that, we need to set up the following options. So I'll create a JSON file here, and first starting with a string, which I'll set the compiler options. So this is going to be an object, and the first thing we are going to do is we can set the module. So we're not going to be using ES module, so we're going to be using common JS. We're also going to set the target. So what target are we expecting TypeScript to spit out our file in? So we're going to target ES 2017. And the most important one, since we are using Nestjs, is experimental decorators. So experimental decorators, and we're going to say true. And the next one is emit decorator metadata. And we're going to set this to true. So now this is our tsconfig file, which is going to enable TypeScript to compile our code that we're going to write into JavaScript. So I'll quickly save it, and we continue with our project. So in order for us to set up a Nestjs project, in our root folder, we're going to create an src folder. And inside this src folder, we're going to create a main.ts file. So now this is the first file that Nestjs is going to be looking for whenever we run our code. So in order for us to create a Nestjs application, we actually need two things. We need a controller and a module. What is a controller? What do they do? Now, a controller actually helps us to handle incoming requests. And how about a module? A module just groups our code together. So in order for us to handle incoming requests in our Nestjs application, we are going to go ahead and import some things from Nestjs/common. So we are going to import some things from Nestjs as common /common. And what are we importing? We are going to need a controller, and we're also going to need get, like this, from. Let's not forget the from. So these are the imports that are going to be coming from Nestjs/common, and we are going to use this controller over here and also get to be able to handle or route incoming requests, because that's what actually controllers help us to do in our Nestjs application. So for us to create a controller, we need to add a decorator. Now we add a decorator with the @ symbol, and we say @controller, and we call it like a function. So we say this is what is a class decorator. So now we need to add a class, and you see decorators that marks a class as a Nestjs controller that can receive inbound requests and produce responses, because this is what actually controller does. So now we need to create a class that is going to help us to handle incoming requests in our application. So we'll come down and say class. Let's call this class app controller. And inside this app controller that we are going to call methods that are going to help us to route incoming requests. So that's why we have the get here. So now we start by, let's say someone wants to send a request to our root route, that is localhost 3000, 5000, whatever port we are listening /. So whenever a request gets there, we want to handle the request. So this get tells Nestjs that it has to be a get request, and it's a decorator, so we still call it as a function. And since we are handling routes to our root route, we are going to say get. Let's call this method get root route, like this, and we call it as a function. So now we have called this as a function, we need to send the response. So whenever a request comes to this get decorator, we could leave it as this, or we could give it a path that is a string. So whenever a request comes to just /, we are going to return a string that says hello world. So whenever a request comes to our root route, we are going to return hello world. So as you can see, we are getting errors in our code, and let's go and check off our tsconfig.json. And that's because of this error we have here. So you must have probably seen it. So we need to change it to compiler options. And once we do this, we save, and we go back to our code. The error should go, and they are gone. So now let me explain the code one more time. We have our controller, and controllers help us to handle routing in our Nestjs application. So now this is a controller decorator, and we have this class app controller. So whenever a request comes to our application, it's going to be forwarded to our controller, and we need methods. Now if it's a get request, this decorator is going to help us to handle the get request. And if it's a get request coming to just /, this method is going to run, and we are going to return hello world. All right, so now we have our controller, our app controller, and in order for us to start our Nestjs application, we also need a module. Now, what is a module and what does it do? A module actually helps us to group our code, bundle our code together. So a module helps us to group the different code that we have. And in order to create a module, we also need to import module from Nestjs/common. And we create a module by using the @module decorator, and we call it as a function. So now we have to create a class. So we're going to create a class, and we're going to also name it our app module, like this. So now this module here needs some bit of configuration, and we're going to pass it an object to configure the module, and we're going to say controllers and controllers take in an array of the different controllers that we have in our application. For now, we just have the app controller, and we are going to pass it as a config to controller. So we'll say controller app controller like this. So now we have our controller and we have our module. Next is for us to be able to start our Nestjs application. In order for us to start Nestjs application, we also need another import, but this time not from nestjs/common. It's going to come from nestjs/core. Let me fix this typo here. And what are we importing from nestjs/core? We're going to import nest factory. So we'll be importing next factory from nestjs/core. And coming down, starting our server, we are going to declare an async function. So we're going to declare an async function. And normally you can give this function any name. There's a typo there. You can give this function any name, but normally it's called bootstrap. So we call this function like this, and we call it bootstrap. So inside this function, we are going to create an instance of our app. And to create an instance of our app, we are going to await the next factory that we imported, this next factory, and in there it has a method, another typo. It has a method, and the method is called create. Now this helps us to do what? To initialize our app. So it contains a reference to our Nestjs application, and we are going to create a reference by giving it our app module. And after that, we also need to listen, because now this creates an instance and now it's stored in our app constant here. So now we need to listen to incoming request, and we do that by also awaiting our app.listen. So our app will be listening on port 5000. You can actually give it any port you need. So now we have our function. We'll come down and we'll call our function. So going through it one more, we have our import statements here, and we said in order for Nestjs to start our application, we need a controller and we also need a module. Now this controller helps us to route requests, incoming requests in our application. For now, we just have one route, which is the root route of our application. And whenever we call this route, we are going to return hello world like this as a string. So that's for our controller, and our module, which helps us to group our code together. Now, inside our controller, so that's configuring the module, we are passing app controller to it. And with this, we have been able to group our application together, because now we are going to be needing this app module to be able to start our application. And we start our application by calling an async function we call bootstrap. And inside this async function, we are going to await nestFactory.create. And .create takes in our module, so we are going to give it our app module. And after that, we are going to be listening on port 3000, on port 5000, like this. So say app.listen on port 5000. So I'll quickly save this and run our terminal. So I'll go to view, terminal. So now this is already navigated into our project folder. So I'll quickly clear to have more space. So now for us to start our application, we are going to run npx ts-node-dev, and now we need to target our main.ts file that we have. So we'll say src-main.ts, and then we hit enter. So normally, if you're using the Nest CLI to start your application, you would not need to run this command. But since we are starting from scratch, we are going to start our application using this command. So now our Nestjs project has started up, and in order for us to see the output on the screen, we are going to visit localhost 5000, because this is the port we are currently listening for incoming requests in our application. So I'll open a new tab and go to localhost : 5,000. And sure enough, we see hello world. And this is coming from our route config over here in our controller, in our get route route. So this now shows how to route in Nestjs application. So for right now, we have our controller and also our module inside the main.ts file. And what we can actually do is to move our controller and also our module into their own file. So I will come in our source folder and create an app.controller.ts file. So now we have our app.controller.ts. I'll quickly highlight and I'll cut our controller and move it into its own file. So now this is our controller, and let's quickly import something. So we are going to import from nest/common with our @nest/common. And what are we importing from @nest/common? We're importing our controller, and we're also going to import get. So now we have our controller worked out, but this file is tied in this class is tied in this file, and in order for us to bring it out, we need to export. So we'll say export class app controller. And now we also need a module folder. So we'll come in our source folder and create an app.module.ts file. And we are going to come to our main.ts and we will cut everything here, Ctrl X, and we are going to paste it here on our app module. So for right now, we are missing the module import. So we import it from @nest/common. That is our module. And we also need our app controller. So we'll import our app controller from going up one level in our app controller. So that is app controller. So I would save, and also I would save the app controller, but we should not forget to export our class over here. So coming back to our main.ts file, we now need to first of all remove all these import statements we have here, also some space here, and we need to import our module. So we'll import our app module by the same directory going up one level and our app.module. So we'll import our app module and we will save our main.ts file. So it's restarting because it's been modified and it's done booting. So if we go back to our project and we reload, we still see hello world. So now this is how we group files in Nestjs. Usually we have our controller, and then we have our module, and then we have our entry point, the entry point of our application, which is our main.ts. So now we have been able to split our files. So in our controller, let's say we want to handle another request. So now instead of going to just slash and we return hello world, let's add a decorator. That's our get decorator. And if users go to localhost 5000/greet, so we're going to add a greet method like this. So whenever we go to this route, this method is going to be returned. So inside here, we are going to return hello there like this. So if we save and it restarts our TypeScript restarts our application, we come back to localhost 5000 and then we see /greet, we see hello there. So this is just the basics of Nestjs, how you get to set up your TypeScript configuration using common module, your target, and then also most importantly for our decorators and for Nestjs is the experimental decorators, the emit decorator metadata, also our main.ts file, which helps us to bootstrap, that is to start our application. In order for us to start our application, we need a module. So a module would help us to group our codes together. And we're using a module which is in our app module. Now our app module, this is our controllers. And our controllers help us for routing. And that's why we have our app controller here, and we have defined two routes. So whenever a user comes to our root route, this get root route function is going to be returned, and also /greet returns it. So this is what the course is all about, giving you a head start about Nestjs and how routing works, starting your own Nestjs project from scratch. Obviously, there's a lot missing here, like authentication, like sending back response, connecting to a database, and all those fun stuff. But this is just to get you started with Nestjs.